Hi everyone, welcome back to Creatify 101 with me, Nia. I am so excited to be coming to you with a little bit of a different video today. We're going to be talking about one of our favorite buzzwords here at Creatify, and that is prompting. Now, prompting is a skill of itself, and it takes a little bit of prompt engineering to get the best outputs from Creatify's tools. Today, we're going to be going through some prompt do's and don'ts for both image and video generation, and talking about the best methods to create consistent and quality outputs through Asset Generator. I'm so excited to get into it. Now let's get into prompting. Okay, everybody, let's dive into prompting best practices in Creatify. But before we begin, I want to define what exactly is prompting in general. Now, I typically like to use the analogy of ordering at a restaurant as one of the ways to describe what prompting is with AI. Now, if we imagine that we are ordering through a waiter or the chef, and we say to that chef or waiter, I would like some food. Now, that statement is a little bit generalized, and they might bring you something that is random or something that you didn't expect. However, if we define exactly the dish that we would like, for example, a medium rare steak with mashed potatoes, that is a little bit more detailed and you have an output or a dish that you expect to have. Prompting with AI is literally the exact same. Now, the more specific you are, the better your results are going to be. Making sure that you aren't vague or balancing that with non-complex adjectives and using basic natural language to develop a prompt that feels detailed but also balanced. Now, how exactly do we put this into best practices when it comes to Creatify's image generation as well as video generation? Now, Creatify's video generation and image generation have a plethora of models to choose from, including image generation models with Nano Banana Pro, GBT, as well as Flux, and so many others that you can explore with. Now, my current pro tip and recommendation when using Asset Generator and choosing the right model, using Nano Banana Pro is one of the top quality models for consistent outputs and references. Now, that is the top market, and I recommend that you try your best to use Nano Banana Pro as much as possible to produce consistent and quality outputs. Now, what exactly also defines a good prompt versus a bad one, specifically as it relates to image generation? If we move down here, we can understand that simply a bad prompt is being vague. Now, there's a lot more nuance to something like this, but being vague is generally one of the reasons why there are high friction points for our users when prompting. If we define what exactly is a good prompt, that means being specific to details, including style and any other contextual details that you might need for your image generation. So how exactly do we contextualize these prompts as good or bad depending on a certain use case? Now, if we scroll down here, we are able to see an example of a more vague prompt. For example, we might have a hand holding a boba drink with glowing light. Now, there's not as much detail into this, and it'll probably give us an output that is just a little bit more general. But if we'd like to create something that feels of higher quality and more able to be used for ads, we can add a little bit more detail, like a hand elegantly holding a tall glass of Thai milk tea boba against a soft pastel gradient background, pink to lavender to cream. And if we look down here, we're able to see the difference of those results. Now, while it didn't do too bad of a job, it is a little bit more general. And if we look at our more descriptive prompt here, we have a higher quality prompt that we're able to work with. Now, in addition to avoiding vague wording in your prompts, we also want to understand some additional do's and don'ts while also understanding how to be detailed and what it means to be detailed. Additional don'ts might include some contradictory words like minimalist but cluttered. Different kinds of oxymorons typically tend to confuse the AI, so we want to avoid any sort of contradictory terms that are included inside of your prompt. Now, some additional do's, however, might include more detail going into things like camera style, defining what type of camera, whether that might be a DSLR, an iPhone camera, or a studio quality camera. We can further go into camera angles, defining different kinds of shots like a wide shot if we want something that's a bird's eye view. There are many different ways to play around with these different camera angles and camera lighting. We can also mention things like the feeling of the image. Do we want to have it be a happy image? Do we want it to lie on the sad side or something that's a little bit more scary. You can also talk about lighting and understanding different ways to define how you want to message your product or your branding message. We can have lighting that is soft, glowy, or using adjectives that relate to different forms of lighting or camera angles. And lastly, negative prompting. Now in S.C.E.N.E, you are able to put guardrails for what to include and what not to include in your prompting. It's very important that you define what this negative prompting looks like, and it really helps define what your output is going to look like. So now that we understand a little bit of some do's and don'ts of prompting in Creatify and using asset generator, specifically for image generation, I want to try this out and try with a new prompt and experiment what this looks like of a vague prompt versus a more detailed one. Now let's head over to Creatify and go ahead and test out a new use case. Okay, everybody, so we're here on Creatify's homepage where we're able to see all the different tools that we can reference and prompt with. We're going to start here and we're going to navigate on the top where it says Asset Generator. Now, upon clicking, we're introduced to this interface. We're able to see all the different models that we can use from image all the way to video generation. And on the left side, we're able to see video, text to video, image to video, or video to video, and also defining different ways to do image generations through text to image or image to image. Now, we'll get into a little bit more about what Asset Generator does in another video, but today we're just going to be testing out our two outputs to understand prompting best practices in our Asset Generator. So we're going to begin here by understanding how exactly a vague prompt works. We have here our model selector. We're right now on Nano Banana. We're going to switch that to Nano Banana Pro as it is higher quality and more consistent, and we're going to input a vague prompt in here. We're going to put a cocktail in a nice glass with colorful lighting in the background. If we go into our advanced settings, we're able to up the resolution to 4K and even have different output formats, but we're going to keep ours as a JPEG. We're going to go ahead and keep this at a 9:16 and just do one single output. Let's go ahead and generate that and come back to it and test our second, more detailed prompt. All right, so while that is generating, let's go ahead and test out our more detailed prompt that provides a little bit more understanding of lighting as well as color and different angles. Let's go ahead and input this here. And the way that this prompt is structured is create a cinematic luxury cocktail ad featuring deep ruby cosmopolitan in a crystal martini glass with condensation and a lime twist. Now we get even more detailed by understanding different ways to do the headlines and typography. Make the night yours with refined subtext saying crafted for bold conversations. Now we're able to also define different headline styles and ways that we'd like to communicate different messages. And lastly, we'll be ending with a Vogue style aesthetic. Now let's go ahead and keep the same resolution, output format, as well as ratio, and hit generate and come back and compare those two. All right, everybody. So we have two different image generations from our prompts. This is our first one where we were a little bit more vague, and it did a pretty good job in defining what that looks like and its best interpretation of it. However, I was looking for something that was a little bit more higher quality and more ad ready. So if we scroll up to the top to our more detailed prompt, we're able to see that it's contextualized it into this very cozy atmosphere, elegant, and also this red ruby cosmopolitan that has also been contextualized with this headline. I think this looks really great, and let's dive into video generation now. So coming back to our little whiteboard here, we're going to break down video generation and our current models and the best ways to prompt with our current models. Now in video generation on Creatify, we currently have Kling available, VO3, Sora, and so many other ones. However, what exactly defines good or bad prompting with all of these? Now currently the top contender of the best video generation goes to Kling with the best quality of character references and consistent character references. If we go to VO3, you can do a lot of more motion related tasks with VO3. However, Kling still remains to be of higher quality. If we move into Sora, Sora does a great job at also doing different types of motion based video generation, but it is not unfortunately as good as character referencing like VO3 or Kling. If we move into some do's or don'ts for video specifically, something to keep in mind when doing video generation is storyboarding and how to put together for different scenes to create one consistent one. Now, don't prompt too many simultaneous actions in one prompt. If we focus on having too many movements in one prompt, the avatars might look slightly off, or you might get some hallucination on what the characters look like or any objects inside of your video. Focusing on 1 to 2 primary movements is the best way to do great video generation with any of these models. Now, if we move into the secondary don't, that is going to be focusing on details and contextualizing your prompt as much as possible. Similar to our image generation, you want to try and be as detailed as possible with your video generation to get the best outputs. For example, if we go into what a bad prompt might look like, we might have something like a freshly made cheeseburger on a kitchen counter. Now, what this looks like further, if we define it as a do and define what this looks like with a more detailed and contextualized prompt, I typically like to follow an acronym that I've come up with personally that has helped me prompt within Creatify as well as other places to create the best quality outputs. Now, this is going to be the acronym S.C.E.N.E, and what this means exactly, broken down by each of its parts, is subject, context, expression, nature, and elements. Now, how exactly does this look to take the vague prompt example that we have and turning it into following this acronym? Now, this is going to help you contextualize the environment, the way that your avatars or your characters function, and also how exactly you want your video to look. Now, if we took that same prompt, we're going to start our subject with a freshly made gourmet cheeseburger, defining its context inside of a modern kitchen or restaurant, on a counter, warm evening lighting, shallow depth of field, and background blur. If we go into our expression, we might refer to slow motion being placed on top, or if this was in relation to a character, we might define what their physical expressions might be looking like. Moving into the nature of this video, we want a rich, indulgent, crave-worthy, premium, warm golden tones with high contrast. So defining even more the feeling of the video and how we want to relay what this video looks like. And lastly, we have the elements, which refer to specific details of the subject and the contextualization of its environment and any other additional details that you'd like to add. Now, this might look like a toasted sesame bun, juicy grilled beef patty, melted cheddar, and etc., and going into even the quality of 4K ultra real detail. Now, this is a really great acronym to use and abide by to understand how to break down a good video generation prompt, especially in Creatify. Now, let's go ahead and take this final prompt with all of that detail and put it into Creatify. But first, we're going to try our vague one and see the results and come back and do a more complex, detailed one and compare the two next to each other. All right, everybody, so our videos have generated, and let's go ahead and take a look at our simple prompt first. Now, Kling did a pretty good job of interpreting this simple prompt as is with the burger on the table and having a short pan around. If we go to our more detailed prompt, however, we have a little bit more of a story and cinematic presence to this, which is really, really great for ad generation. We have our melting cheeseburger or cheese on our cheeseburger and the steam coming off. It creates more of a story that I really enjoy and like to see. As you can see, prompting is such an art and a skill of its own, and I hope that you are able to learn a little bit more about how to prompt better within Creatify and get better outputs because of it. I'm so excited to see how you explore with prompting, and don't forget to reach out to me if you'd like to learn more about different do's and don'ts or ways to use our tools. I'm so excited for the next video. Don't forget to like and share and subscribe to our channel for more tutorial content. All right, I'll see you guys soon. Bye.